Broker Bulletin acknowledges the traditional custodians of all the lands across the country on which we record our podcast and pays its respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Welcome to the Broker Bulletin podcast, where better begins. Join us as we chat with brokers about what's working for them, what drives them, and the real challenges and wins that matter most right now.
Welcome, wherever you are listening throughout Australia and New Zealand, to another broadcast of Success Breeds Success. And this is the series where I'm fortunate enough to be able to talk to some of our leading brokers in our industry about their journey, what's made them successful, some of the challenges they faced to get to that success. And I'm delighted to be able to talk to today and present to you Lauren Hall's story. It's really quite an exciting one. Let's jump into that. First of all, Lauren, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So let me give you a quick background just so we can go into this and give everyone a little bit of an idea of who you are and where you're coming from. So based in Southport, you've got over 15 years of experience in finance, helping hundreds of families. A Kiwi originally, and moved to Australia from a bank, joined one of the really great broking firms, Loan Market Edge, with Phil Rogers, not 10 years ago now, I suppose it would be. Just recently gone out to start your own business. You became that joined that business, that Loan Market Edge in about 2016. You've won a number of awards. You've got the LMG Literacy Advocate of the Year in 2024. Top 100 female broker list, MFAA National Newcomer Young Professional in 2020. In 2020, MPA Top Gun, REB as a Real Estate Broker of the Year. So you've been you're very familiar with the stage, no stranger to that. You started a podcast in 2023 called Mad Money, a podcast that focuses on improving financial literacy. And that's a theme, obviously, that I'm keen to dial into and understand more from you, where you really help financial literacy for your listeners, providing practical tips on how to leverage finance and property market to help them achieve their financial goals. Over the last 4 years, you've achieved Premier status, in 2023 Elite status, which is really a huge achievement. And since then, you opened your business only 6 months ago. You've written $34 million in that 6 months, helping over 61 customers. And that start phase, as we'll go through, is no small feat when you've got that's all happening. So it's a long introduction, but I think probably just good to give people a bit of colour. Let's go back to New Zealand when you started 15 years ago. You'd just done a trade. You're in signage.
Yeah.
Being one of the bit of a pioneer as a female in that industry. And so probably a theme coming through. And then you got into banking. So tell us a bit about that. You got into banking in New Zealand and you found a bit of a home.
Yeah, I did. So after the apprenticeship I did was 5 years, so 10,000 hours in a trade. And then I was a little bit older and wiser and went, maybe I don't want to do this forever, and decided to get into the bank. So I actually initially looked at it because I liked the way the environment looked. So as I said to you, trades can be quite a stick style of motivational environment. And when I got into the bank, I found that really, the KPI sales piece was quite motivating. And I found that a really easy way to learn and to do really well. So I figured out after about 6 months as a teller that lending is where I wanted to be. Felt like a puzzle to me to put things together. And then a great opportunity to get into the third-party broking team. And I was there for about 18 months or so before I moved over. And I loved third-party. I loved working with my brokers. It was brilliant. We were a really high-volume little team, really stressed. We lived off coffee. Our office was in the back of one of the branches where all the safes were. It was our little dungeon, but we loved it. We had lots of fun.
It was New Zealand's lost, Australia's gained when you moved over. What was behind the reason for the move?
It was actually just lifestyle, to be fair. I was down in Wellington then. I do not love the cold, and I'd always loved Australia. So, opportunity, lifestyle was really what brought me over here.
And you chose Gold Coast? Was it straight to the Gold Coast, or did you stop somewhere else first?
No, so we actually did a little trip from Sydney to Cairns in one of those little juicy camper vans, if anyone's familiar with that. Sheesh, it's a big country, we'll say that. Didn't think I'd want to be on the Goldie. It's full of Kiwis. Why would I want to come here? Thought I'd love Sydney. It's far too big for me. I'm a little country kid, so that was a bit overwhelming. And Cairns was everything wants to eat you up there, which is the other place I thought I'd like. So we ended up on the Goldie, and it's home. It's paradise. I love it.
You've got a great foundation there and worked so hard for that. You went to, I think it was Suncorp, was it? at Suncorp originally, and then you moved pretty quickly into broking. So tell us a bit about that phase, getting to Australia, starting the bank, deciding to become a broker. Was that a long process, a difficult process?
The reason I started in the specific bank that I wasn't in New Zealand is I was a customer there, and they were amazing to us from a customer service point of view. And I said to them one day, I said, you know what, you're so good to us. I bet the bank is good to you because your service is so good to the customer. And I really engaged and I really loved that bank. I had a real strong connection to that.
Which bank was that?
That was ASB. So I did a Skype interview for my Suncorp job over here, which I'd never done one, and the state manager who did that with me had never done one before. And they said, awesome, would love to have you. You got 3 weeks to get over here. And away I went. And it was a little bit different to back home. There's a couple of things. The foundation's the same of lending, but there are some things that are done differently. So it was quite good to cut my teeth in a branch and learn a few of those things. I had a really great role there. There was a lot of restructuring at that time in the bank, and I just didn't maybe engage with the brand and love the brand as I had before. Then an opportunity just out of the blue presented itself to be a broker, and I thought, why not have a conversation?
And that was what about the individual that you joined? It was more about the feeling you had, more so than the actual anything else. How did that come about? Was that a long search for which how you became a broker, or was it something that happened to you fairly spontaneously?
So I wasn't necessarily looking, to be fair. It wasn't hot on my radar, but I was approached by the loan market recruitment team. At the time, I was like, look, I'm happy in my role, not really interested. They came back again, like everyone in prospecting, no matter what role you're in, should do. So they came back again and got me at a week where I was pretty frustrated with some things. And I went, you know what, I'll have a conversation. So I met with the recruitment team, and they said, we have a broker in Townsville who was Phil Rogers, who's expanding his business to start on the Gold Coast. So he wanted to build a Gold Coast-based business, I suppose, and was looking to bring brokers on. So I didn't know who Phil was, to be fair. I hadn't had any exposure to third-party or broking over here. I was only in retail. So he came down and I met with him. And definitely that was more around, I always say I picked a leader, not necessarily a job. And that's something that has always been quite important to me is there are people in my career who've had a big influence on me. And it hasn't necessarily been the job, it's been the people. So he, anyone who knows Phil knows that he has an insane amount of energy and, he was super passionate and had this great vision and 2 hours later, we're still talking about all this great stuff that he wants to do. And, it was a leap of faith in a sense that, it was to go out of a lending manager role in a bank to a newbie broker was a big salary change, obviously. I didn't really know anything about him, but I went, whatever train this guy's on, I want to be on it because he's going places and I'm excited to be part of that and excited to build something from the ground up here on the coast. So definitely it was more around picking him as a leader and his personality that resonated with me and energy. It's
a great lesson, isn't it? That the impact the leader has and when you're talking in recruiting, just how important that sense of purpose is. And you mentioned before that when you with the bank that as a customer you're treated really well, therefore you thought the staff was treated well. Mm-hmm. Carry that over into your business, haven't you? Thinking about service chains and the customer value service proposition. Now you've started your own business. What's your vision for that? How have you thought about putting all that together and how you're going to look after your team and look after your customers?
Yeah. So, and Phil and I definitely shared that viewpoint around making sure that your team are number one and that they feel supported and that they love what they do because that does carry on to the customer. So for me now as a leader, for the last couple of years of my team, it's definitely been something for me around making sure that my girls feel supported, they're engaged, that they buy into what we're trying to do. For a long time, I didn't value the difference that we as an industry actually make to people's lives. I sort of thought, we just give people loans. I didn't really understand that the fundamental of home ownership and what that means to financial wellness and people's futures. So once I understood that that's something for me that I really try and carry over to the team to understand, hey, we make a really big difference and a really big impact. What we're doing is it's really stressful for people. It's a lot of money. It's not up to them to understand how this works. So let's kind of be that A team, we call it, or just, wrap around them and make sure they feel really, really supported. But definitely, I do believe that the customer can feel the culture of a business through their experience with you. How
do you find your team? You recruit your staff. Do you look for attitude and train up on experience? You try and get skills, bring in, how important is experience to you?
Yeah.
How do you, you've obviously touched a lot into the why for you sounds important. Is that what's important to your team?
Yeah, it is. And again, that's something else, I'm learning is that everyone has a different motivator. Everyone's driven differently. The things that drive me are not necessarily going to drive my team. And I have to find out what's important to them. How do I make them feel successful and feel valued? And that might be different to how I feel. So the first person I took on is actually someone I worked with very back in the day at ASB. So she's also a Kiwi. So we sort of joked back then that she was the head teller at the time, and, I never balanced, and she used to get frustrated with me. And now look at how the tables turned. But that, that's great. And that was someone who had experience, who I had known, but probably I haven't known her for some time. We hadn't worked together for some time. And that was a bit of a learning for me and for her. I probably assumed some things around how we would work together. And I went, oh no, hang on a minute. It's been a really, really long time since we've actually worked together. But that was great. That was someone who had some credit experience that I knew and I trusted. We weren't necessarily friends that went out on the weekend, but there was definitely that sort of connection there. And then Shay, who I have as well, who I actually met through another broker. So she's new to industry and she's doing extremely well. And for me, that was more about attitude. So, her approach to work ethic's really important to me. I'm pretty clear she would love to ultimately be a broker. So for me, that's a pretty long journey for me in my business, because I believe you need to have a really good, strong level of depth in this industry. This is not surface level stuff. So how long do you think it takes for someone in a customer service role, customer support role, to go into become a broker? How long? Do you have a view to how long that journey takes? One thing, I think if you can understand the fundamentals, that's really, really important. So if you skim over that, if you're I'm going to teach you to throw it into a servicing calculator, or I'm going to teach you how to do this, and that's different for me. I want you to understand those core principles and the foundation of lending, so you understand why. Commercially, is this a deal we want to do or not? Is this a good risk profile? Instead of, do they have enough deposit, or does it service, or whatever that is? Journey-wise, I think part of that comes down to how much the leader or the mentor's prepared to be invested. When I look back at my journey with Phil, we sat across, I already had experience in lending, but I hadn't been a broker. And we literally sat across the desk from each other for, 3 years. I followed him around everywhere. He did every phone call on speaker. I got to understand the interaction with him and his team, with the bank, with the customer, with the real estate agent. So you learn so much when you're actually really part of it. And I just sponge that up, and I used to joke, I just sound like him. I'm just a female version of him from a broker point of view. But that's when it's done really well. So for me, with my team, I have them in an office with me. We're in a little open plan office. I'm really loud. They're really quiet. Drives them nuts. They love it when I'm not here. But I want them to learn me. I want them to hear the conversations, the hard conversations, workshop things together. That's one of the great value you get out of having teams co-located. And, you wonder with this whole move to remoteness now that's happening, just how much of that we're losing, that ability to sponge, or whether you just need to then look at how do you augment that and do that more remotely. And it is interesting that sort of osmosis that happens doesn't happen naturally anymore. You've got to manufacture it. I can put some things in notes and they can look at that. But if they can hear my conversations, I can, again, throw things on speaker and they can be part of that conversation, or we can do it together. You learn so much more. And that I want them to hear the depth and not just the surface level stuff. So let's just do a couple of quick things. We'll just give a couple of bit of background for some of the listeners. How do you find clients? How did you, when you first started, I think you said Phil was pretty much new to the Gold Coast. Mm-hmm. He's obviously from Townsville as well beforehand. How did you go about finding clients then? And how do you go about finding clients now? So I was still pretty fresh off the boat. I don't have any kids. I wasn't in any sporting teams or anything, so I didn't really have a network. And to be fair, Phil moving here maybe had a small network of friends, but not a big network like he had back up in Townsville. So the Ray White relationship was absolutely fundamental and critical to what we were doing. So we partnered with Surface Paradise, was the biggest real estate group then at the time. And that was where we were really, I suppose, investing a lot of time in that relationship, because it was either that or pick up the phone book. And so I look back and I go, that's how I built my businesses off the back of Ray White. So, and again, learning to go to those sales meetings and how to sound like a real estate agent, the language that they use, what's important to them. It's different to what's important to us.
It's a hard thing to do, isn't it? Like it's easy to say, go work real estate agents. And what are some of the challenges you face in that? Or some of the things that the energy you put into those things? Take us through that, just for those who maybe tried it, said, look, I don't really know if it's for me. I don't know if it's working properly. Like, how would you talk to a broker about how to do it properly?
We were lucky. It's a huge group, and there were 100 odd plus residential agents in that group split across multiple sites. So that sounds amazing. We sort of called it the beast, and it's a lot. But from a time point of view, for me, for a few years there was a lot of, I sort of probably took on that primarily. And when I look at the time around sales meetings, auctions, working out of the offices, traveling around, open homes, there's an enormous amount of time you spend, right? And any relationship involves time. So when you're trying to build a relationship with that many people, it's hard. I'll be honest, I got probably to year 6 or 7 in that business and was working, I've been 6 days a week for as long as I can remember. That's just normal for me. I have 2 days off and I feel like I've gone on a hop. But, when I looked at going, well, how much time am I spending with these guys and what's the return on this? I had to make a bit of a decision around whether I wanted to continue to do that, because it was really hard to engage that many people. It was hard because it felt like for me to say, hey, you know what, maybe I should just work with one specific small office, 4 or 5 agents, and let's just invest in that. It's going to free up some time for me. I'm going to get better engagement. But it was a little bit, I sort of almost felt like I'd failed a little bit to make that call. It was quite hard.
Scary? Was it scary to give up in this opportunity and focus on that? What was the hardest thing about making that decision for you?
From the outside, it looks like an unbelievable opportunity, and it is. And I'd worked so hard in it. So it felt like I was being a bit crazy to give that up. And it was, I still talk to those guys and they still refer to me. That's cool. But it was just more the level of intensity around energy that I was going to stop putting in there. So, I was walking away from something I'd spent so much time building. I knew I did it well. I was like, I know I do this well. I know I'm doing it properly, but it's just not working. And it started to affect my confidence. It was starting to affect my energy. And it was like, either I just continue to do something that's not working, or I make a decision to go, do I change what I'm doing and just maybe invest in a smaller team? I might not end up with any leads. It may be the biggest mistake that I make is to walk away from all of that. And then, some other broker goes in there and I'm like, well, I built that relationship. Like, it was hard. There's all this stuff. To make that decision to go, okay, I'm going to just invest in this little office now. It felt like I was walking away from something I'd built, and it was really, really hard. But I went, either I continue to do it and continue to be frustrated, or I just make a decision and I back myself and I just get on with it. And I should have made that decision probably 12 months earlier than I did. I spent too long trying to make something work that wasn't working. And that's something that I'm personally working on, is maybe accepting when something's not working and moving forward.
So tell me, just how did that decision go? Was it you glad? What was the outcome of changing?
I had kind of made that decision in my head, but I also had an external business coach at that point that I kind of wanted as a bit of a soundboard off that. And he said to me, let's confront this and let's do like a time audit. Okay, which was quite confrontational for me. Well, it was confronting for me to do, because I'm like, mate, I work stupid amounts of hours and you want me to do a time audit. To me, that felt like I was lazy, right? From just from my point of view. But I did it, and I actually could see the numbers and the facts. And I went, I'm spending 30% of my week running around and I'm not getting that return on effort. So as soon as I kind of had clarity around that, instead of it just being an emotional decision, I needed some numbers and some facts. I made that decision. I didn't necessarily say to those agents, oh, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I just chose to invest more time into one particular little office and one particular little group. And that was the best thing I did. The time that freed up for me to do other types of prospecting, to work my database, to support and train my team, also to invest in that little office. It was the best decision I made. I should have done it 12 months earlier.
It's such a fantastic way of starting, I think, particularly. You get to talk to people, you get to know what's going on in the market. I think dealing with agents is such a fantastic way to put that to one side. I think one of the really interesting things about what you just said, Lauren, is so many good brokers get to a point where they beating their head up against a wall. They're trying so hard on things and something's not quite working for them. And it's hard sometimes to put your finger on what that is. And, and I've spoken to lots of really good people and they say, oh, I feel like a bit of a failure on this, or it's not quite working like I thought it should, or how come he or she's doing really well and I'm not, and I'm work just as hard. It's hard sometimes to take the step back and think about and analyze what it is you're doing and then have the courage to make a change to something you're doing. Can you just maybe go through, you mentioned before it's something you're trying to change, how you want to change that in your thinking? Can you share that with maybe some of the listeners around how that's part of your thinking now?
I think we also need to sometimes acknowledge our personality traits a little bit too. So for me as a person, I've always known it, but I now understand I don't reflect. So I'm not a person that looks back. I'm very much get out of bed, we're moving forward constantly, which has huge advantages that's just the way I am. I'm always looking forward. The negative to that is I might set myself a goal or we're going to work towards something. I don't necessarily stop and go, hey, hang on, we need to go back and track that. You need to sit down and look at the numbers and go, is this goal you're trying to achieve or this new process or whatever you're doing, is it actually working? And I bury my head in the sand a little bit. And I say, oh, but it's because I just keep working really, really hard. But the reality is I'm just burying my head in the sand. So I had to be real about numbers and I had to embrace it and go, hey, put it on paper. I'm very detailed and structured as a person, but when it comes to goals and vision, I'm actually a bit wishy-washy. And I'm like, oh, we'll just be the best broker in Australia, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, what does that actually mean? Get detailed about it. So I've had to do that. I have to allocate time to sit and go, hey, you said for the last 90 days, this was something you were going to work on and do, and this is the outcome you wanted. Either A, have you achieved the outcome, or B, has it made a difference or enough of a difference for you to keep doing it? But I've had to take ownership of that because I haven't done it well. I know I haven't done it well. I just keep going.
Do you have many goals that you set in your business at the moment? Like how many would you be, any you'd like to share or things that you're working on?
So for the first few months it was pay the bills, pay the wages. It's just get some leads in. Yeah, I do. So, we have goals as a team around obviously the amount of business we want to write. Things around, I've got to rebuild my Google reviews because that was one of the biggest things for me. Obviously, going out on my own was I lost, the business I had built in a sense from a branding point of view. So I've got to rebuild that. So that's important to us. Things around for the team. So I've got ideas around how I want them to feel more engaged or from a culture point of view. So we talk through that. I'm trying to obviously upskill them. So we've created their own little development plans. And that's helping me. Staff is actually making me more accountable because I'm like, oh, I said I'm going to do a 12-month annual check-in. Shit, I got to do it. If that was, I just wouldn't do it. Or, oh, I said we're going to have a sales meeting once a week. I've got to do it because I've got people that are relying on me to do that. So that's made me more accountable to do those things.
You mentioned before how busy you are. You obviously, people will see how obviously you're a very passionate person and your motivation is deep within you. How do you think about time now with your own business? It's obviously a lot of work goes into that. As you're thinking about how you spend your time changed much, or is it pretty much the same as it's been since you first started?
The other big thing that changed for me that I lost and have probably regained is around that why piece and the why are we doing it? And I had lost it a little bit, and that affects energy and motivation. I'm a big believer in energy. Like, it's important to me. I want to be around people. Again, that's why when I met Phil originally, I was like, I want to be on this train because I'm big on that. So for me to feel like I'm doing something that is making a difference, that fuels my curiosity and my drive. So that gives me that energy. It's more for me now around allocating time to things that are important. I could do this all day, every day, no worries, provided motivation and that energy and that drive. And that, I understand that changes, obviously. It's not all easy in business. Some days I really don't want to do this anymore. I have more weekends off. So I had last weekend off and I was like, oh my goodness, woke up Sunday morning it's not going to work. No, cool. I'm really enjoying that. I have taken up a couple of hobbies, which is a bit exciting for me. And again, that's, that means that there is time allocated in my calendar that I have to do those things. So I haven't, for a long time, I have not done that. And that's just been really poor on my side to fill the cup up and do things that for me fuel that energy so that when I come into the office, I'm bringing that into my team and to my customers as well.
So we started talking about prospecting and you spoke about how you changed from it to a smaller thing. And it's probably proof that sometimes less is more, that a smaller number of relationships working better, it gives you a better outcome than lots of relationships being shallow. Before we talk about more about prospects, you're now doing some other prospecting outside of agents, which is interesting. How are you finding the processing part of your business? Is that smooth? You mentioned you've got a couple of team members in there now. Like, you're happy with how your back end is working?
Yeah, they're great. And again, for me, because I'm upskilling, I would love them to stay in two certain roles because that's easy for me from a process point of view because I can build that. We moved to all of the loan market workflows and have had to sort of rebuild it a couple of times. And there was a couple of times I'm like, I don't want to roll it out because I'm now upskilling this person or that's going to change. And we just had to do it and go, you know what? We're just going to do this thing and we're just going to have to change it as we go. So we have a pretty clear structure around who does what. It's important to me that we all take ownership of what we do. So, for me, is how I hand a file over, there's a certain way that I do that and I make sure I do that properly, and the same with the team and what they do. So because we're a small team, the structure is pretty clean and pretty clear, but we're always looking to improve that. And that's where, working with the corporate team around and the tech and the AI is a big piece. So I'm like, how can we start plugging that in? And my goal is that we get from A to B as quickly as possible, meeting compliance, giving the client the best experience. So I like to have a fairly simple structure in a sense. I don't want forms or checklists for forms and more things. I despise spreadsheets. I'm just not a spreadsheet person. I'm trying to make it really clean and simple. For me, let's just try and keep it simple.
And I think that's always one of the challenges brokers have, isn't it? Like, they don't have enough people to talk to, or they've got too many people to talk to and they don't have enough time to actually help the people. Yeah. That struggle of number of people and processing is always a balance. And you've started doing some other forms of marketing. You're doing your podcast. You're doing now a literacy program, which I want to get into. I want to touch on that a bit. But your literacy work with schools, your podcast, it's all linked together. Can you just maybe tell us about that? Tell us about why it's important. I get it's important, but is it good for business? Just take it.
I have a little bit of I don't know if you call it a mantra or whatever in my business, but that's not all business is good business. And so a few years ago, I went, what type of business do I want to write and where do I want to get that from? And good business for me is a good person to work with. Okay, I don't want to deal with dickheads. I don't care how much money you've got. You've got to be a good person to work with, and profitable business. So it's something that, we can then continue to invest in the business or back into things for the customer or the community. So I had a bit of a strategy around an area that I wanted to start to work, and I decided that I wanted to focus on the local broker piece. That became something like, right, this is sort of in my brainstorm, this is the middle of my brainstorm, let's focus on local broker. The Ray White office became part of that because they were in that suburb. So that kind of went, okay, that solidifies that decision to do that. There was a big state high school. So we went, cool, again, for me, how do I engage a community from a business point of view? And then the podcast was really, again, part of what is with the school, which is around education and literacy. So going, how do I give back or be someone that can provide just really common sense, simple education around this stuff? Let's not make it hard or complicated. Let's make it really simple for people to understand, because that's actually going to help them long term.
Because most people would say kids are interested in. Most of my kids sort of are getting this focus on something for more than 10 minutes, especially when they were teenagers. There's other things they want to do. How's it received by the school kids?
Yeah. So the school piece, so I go into the senior students. So there's about 600 in the senior school. So that's 16, 17, I think it is here. So they just do an assembly, so that will pull them in together. I have a big presentation, which is up on a projector, and I make that really engaging. So, for example, the one that's around debt, so that's around a credit file. So we have a big credit file up. What do these different types of things mean? We have a credit card, the good old CommBank credit card, the minimum repayment on the side. But if you only make the minimum, you're going to pay $95,000 in interest. It's going to take you 120 years to pay it off. That stuff, they actually love that. Like, they froth that. And you do a couple and then you're like, let's have a guess. What do we think it's going to be? And they start throwing outrageous numbers out, which is great. They're getting the concept of it. You guys are going to go and get your first car, understanding this is what a car loan contract means. I was blown away to learn that 80 to 90% of senior students are already working. Things like Afterpay, I'm not in there telling them how to buy their first home. I'm trying to actually give them tools that are useful to them, and they love it. And the teachers love it. I met with some clients a few weeks ago who are long-term clients of mine, but their kids are at the school. And the mum said, oh, yeah, such and such actually came home and said you were there and you talked to them about credit cards and how Afterpay works. And
some people may say, Lauren, why are you doing that with school kids? It's they can't borrow money. They can't buy a house. Are you wasting your time with school kids? How would you respond if someone asked you that question?
If we talk business strategy point of view, engaging your community and giving back is really powerful. So I do a fair amount of business already from the teachers of that school and from the parents because I'm engaged and I'm involved in that community. So from a business point of view, I think it's a great strategy. But also we know as brokers the amount of time that we spend educating 30, 40, 50-year-olds around consumer debt. It's ridiculous. And I'm doing a fair bit of debt consolidation at the moment. I'm seeing more of it now. And I've done a bit of research around financial education and literacy. And for me, if I look at how would I want to be remembered? Like if people were to talk about me and my business, is it, oh, Lauren just does home loans? Or was it actually, Lauren made an impact where she was able to teach students around some basic financial literacy. They took that information home and shared that with mum and dad or their siblings or their cousins, and that actually helped them have a better future. My actual mantra, creating futures, is not just about me writing home loans. And that's something for me that's become more important to me as I'm getting older, I need to feel like I'm making a difference. So it's good for the soul. I love it. It's actually it's really fun and really cool, and I do really love it. But also I know from a business point of view, it's not a silly strategy. It's actually a great strategy for it, especially if you're in a regional area or anywhere where there's a local community. If you can be involved, the community really embraces that and they love that.
I think it's one of the things I get some brokers talk to me and say, oh, I'm worried about, our future, and I'm worried about AI, and I'm worried about digital direct, and I get the concern. You've taken a view of saying, look, I'm really part of the community. I'm giving back. I'm engaged. I'm helping people. And you're seeing that come through, from saying teachers. And I think that thing about the more you're giving generously on something you're passionate about is always good business, because it breeds community and it breeds the fact that you're actually, you're doing something selfless, but in the process, creating a brand and a profile that's important to other people.
And you know what, Sam, I actually think as an industry, we have a bit of a duty of care around this. You look at Combank that goes in and opens a Dolomite account for 5-year-olds and calls it financial literacy and walks out. I just don't think it's good enough anymore. I actually think that we have a duty of care to pass on the knowledge that we have, because the system's broken and we're not going to fix it if we just keep going round and round and round. So that part for me is going, well, I know I never learned that, right? I learned through experience. Financial literacy improves with age because we learn as we go. And sometimes those are really, really hard lessons to learn. And as brokers, we see that when our customers come in. We have to educate them. And I go, gosh, why didn't we learn this, just the basic stuff when we were younger?
So I reckon you would have inspired a couple of brokers on the call to say, that's something that resonates with me, what Lauren's doing. How did you get that started? How did you do it?
Yeah.
If I'm listening to you now, I'm thinking, this is what I want to do the same thing. Any advice around how to get started in this space?
So if you're looking at I'm a gold sponsor of the high school. So there's a lot of other things that I do as part of that, and I get access to other things with the school. So schools love that, right? Yes, it costs money. So it's quite expensive for me to do that, but they're keen. So if you want to reach out to a school, I would just reach out to the principal of your local school. If you're looking at the financial literacy piece, I built some slides. We have all the info. We've got credit files for days. We've got credit card, home loans, car loans. We've got it all. Just redact all of your sensitive information out of it. And I just put that into a presentation. The marketing team were amazing. They branded that for me to look nice and slick, so I didn't have to spend hours like that. And then I just made some notes. And I started with the one around consumer debt because that's easy for us. We talk about it every day. I have other sessions around super and tax and HEX debts and investing, the Fair Work sites. That takes me a bit more to get into. I've got to spend a bit more time. But yeah, I would just say just build something. You're having the conversations with people every day. It's the same stuff and they embrace it. I met with the P&C first because I felt like I wanted to make sure that the parents understood the reasoning behind what I was doing. That was really important. I didn't want to be seen to be going and selling a product. And again, that's probably why I didn't pitch home loans either, because I don't sell credit cards and personal loans. So I wanted to make sure the P&C understood what I was doing. So if they had any feedback, they could support me and they understood that. And then I just went to the principal and said, I want to do it. Let's do it. Let's get these kids in a room and let's go.
And you've got some stuff on your socials now too, if people want to check that out. Has that been a good way of actually promoting your business and yourself to the community, like in terms of how important is social to you and your engagement in that now?
Yeah, we've always done a fair bit of social media. I don't use it personally, so it's not a space that I love to be in all the time, but I, again, acknowledge that is that next generation coming through. That's how they engage. It wasn't necessarily a prospecting tool for me originally. It was more a credibility, trust, engagement tool. You know, if I'm talking to someone, I know if you jump on my website or my social media or my Google reviews, you're not going anywhere else, right? Because once you see who I am and what I do, I'm going to have you. But it has now become more a prospecting tool. Any of those type of videos that have an emotional connection or a community, they go bananas. That one in particular it was like over 20,000 views on that video, which for me, I might get, 1,000 on something that I think's about how to use redraw or offset or super educational. Everyone needs to know this. It's really boring. No one really cares. But if you can do something that's really engaging or community focused, the reach on that, the shares were crazy. There is a much better reach on that. So I didn't necessarily do it for that reason because I don't necessarily understand a lot around that marketing piece, but it was significantly like, whoa, okay, this is what people are going to share and this is what people are going to look at.
I haven't asked you much about the first 6 months of your business, the frenzy of it and the busyness of it. For those who are starting in a business and maybe a couple of months behind where you are, anything you want to share about that early stage part of getting started? And
Yeah. No one ever does this alone is the reality, right? We all have people around us that support us and we have mentors and friends in the industry. And I think if you can build a little community, that's phenomenal because that gives you support where you need it and people you can bounce things off. And I was really fortunate to be part of a business where I had such great mentorship and a team for a really long time. So I kind of was able to come out and get the gate a lot quicker than maybe what someone normally would. Be clear on what you want. You know, for me, that was something I had to regroup on is actually, why am I doing this and what is my vision and what is the type of customer I want? What's the type of business I want to build? What do we want to be known for? Be clear on that. And for me now, I know exactly the type of customer we want to work with and we want to support, the type of business we want to do. So I think understanding that's really, really important. If you want an easy gig, this ain't it. Go sell ice cream somewhere. You know, this ain't the job for you. It's hard, but it's really, really rewarding. And know that you do make a difference. Property ownership is the number one socioeconomic factor when it comes to financial wellness. You are making a difference when you help people buy property and save money and you're doing financial education. It's a big thing. We should really celebrate that as an industry.
I think that's an awesome way to finish, Lauren. I think to be able to recap that, and I think for people to hear the depth of feeling you have for and the passion you have for what you do, I think is so infectious. So thank you for sharing that with all of us. Thank you for listening to another edition of Success Breeds Success. You've been listening to Lauren Hall, a new business owner, loan marketer on the Gold Coast. Thanks, Lauren. And those of you who actually want to hear more or listen more, no doubt you can check her out on her socials and on her website.
Loan Market /Lauren Hall.
Reach out to Lauren if you want. No doubt she's someone that you'll be meeting more and more as this industry grows and as your journey in that continues. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for tuning in to Broker Bulletin. We would hate for you to miss an episode. Subscribe to Broker Bulletin in your favourite podcast app. Has this episode been helpful? We'd love you to rate and review us. It'll help us deliver content that's useful to you and help others discover us. If you have great ideas for topics worth tackling or have burning questions you'd like addressed on an upcoming episode, reach out. Links in the show notes. See you next time.